In the era of maritime transportation in the 1980s, shipyards were everywhere, machine tools were widely spread, flags were flying, long voyages were ringing, and lighthouses were shining brightly. Large ships sailing into the ocean sing high, riding the wind and waves on the sea, and the old and new on the islands transition. Here, we fight against the sky, the sea, the wind, and even humans. Sun Bailu's ancestors were all top-notch fishing industry leaders. She grew up in the sunny fishing village and was a walking positive energy machine, gathering a myriad of talents. Everyone expected her to live a brilliant life, but her family was ruined and her old age was miserable. In the end, she jumped into the sea in loneliness and despair, ending her tragic life. Returning to her youth, she remains the famous figure of Huanhai Township who everyone knows and focuses on. In addition to seeking revenge, she also needs to change the tragic fate of the entire family. Continuing to rush to the tide and collect treasures, setting sail far into the sea, accumulating wealth, the vast sea of stars is already before her eyes, and she has a new dream. She wants to walk towards the most magnificent and dazzling film industry, stand in the spotlight, and become the last beam of light that illuminated her life before her death. By the way, she also rescued the peerless and beautiful young man who died in a shipwreck at the age of 16. Female lead. Top-notch appearance plus focus on making money plus top-notch social skills plus high-intensity execution ability plus even the hair is full of fighting spirit male lead. Gentle scheming plus hypocrisy and depression plus abdominal blackness and disgust with the world plus later sticky semen. 1v11. Way healing, the female lead will always be a little sun. Deduction group. 2229420014 keywords of the novel. Rebirth of the 80 small fishing village without a pop-up window, Rebirth of the 80 small fishing village. Download the complete text, Rebirth of the 80 small fishing village. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Her revenge she revealed with her own hands. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Her revenge she revealed with her own hands. The large iron door of the female supervisor closed behind her, and there was still a buzzing echo in the air. Sun Bailu held a small amount of all her wealth in her hand and slowly surveyed the brand new world before her. The sea breeze in Anshan blew her black and white mixed ear-length short hair, and the corners of her eyes were covered with fine lines. Under her right ear, which had been brushed by the short hair, there was a scar that had lasted for years. A man in his 30s sounded in his voice, "Hello, are you Director Sunday?" Sun Bailu turned her head and looked at the man speaking. The man, dressed in a decent suit, looked at her and said, "Director Sun still remembers Su Hai. The one who worked in the ammonia plant in your previous factory." Sun Bailu thought for a moment and nodded. The man took out a heavy letter. "I am Su Hai's grandson. He died of pancreatic cancer 5 years ago. Before he died, he asked me to come here today and wait for you to get out of prison. I will give this to you." The letter was thick, and the man gave it to Sun Bailu before leaving. Sun Bailu held the letter and watched the man walk towards a shiny black sedan before driving away. Sun Bailu found a green belt and sat down to open the letter. As she looked down, her hands trembled more and more. Her aging eyes were like copper bells, and tears rolled down her face. So that's what happened, it's her again. Xie Yizhen. Well, this woman with a heart like a snake and a scorpion. Sun Bailu lowered her hands, her ears roaring as she gazed at the unfamiliar world before her. 20 years ago, Sun Bailu's food refrigeration plant suddenly experienced a serious liquid ammonia leakage accident, resulting in the deaths of 3 people in surrounding residential areas and more than 10 people suffering from throat burns. As the legal representative being held accountable, she lost all her assets and was sentenced to life imprisonment. But now, Su Hai confesses to her in the letter that the leak accident back then was because he collected 100,000 yuan from Xie Yizhen and deliberately sneaked back to open those valves on a night when he was not on duty. Sun Bailu was almost out of breath, and the letter in her hand was crumpled into a ball. Su Hai deserves to die, but he died before her for 5 years. Xie Yizhen is still alive. Why did she know that Xie Yizhen was alive? Because Xie Yizhen came to the prison several times a year to see her, with the purpose of humiliating her. The last time I saw Xie Yizhen was 3 months ago. Xie Yizhen, dressed in the attire of a wealthy lady, proudly told her that her adopted daughter Chen Linlin had died, and it took 3 days to find her body. Chen Linlin had raised her own little white face and stabbed her more than 20 times. That day, Xie Yizhen sat opposite her and looked at her with a look of extreme schadenfreude. I didn't tell you before, that little white face was the one I introduced to Linlin. That man likes to drink, gambles recklessly, has a rich criminal record, and can do anything with his temper. But if he can get stabbed more than 20 times, it must be because your good daughter is pushing people crazy. As Sun Bailu trembled like falling into the icy abyss, Xie Yizhen's eyes became even more excited and sinister. You don't have to be angry. Before the incident, you saved money for Chen Linlin's household registration every year, but how many times did she come to see you in the past decade? It's been 8 years since she saw you, right? She already treated me as her biological mother. I even took her to make a will before. Although you didn't have much money left for her, it's all mine now. Look at my fur, it was bought with your money. Not only that time, but every time Xie Yizhen came to see her, he always aimed to stimulate her. She also mentioned her grandfather's death, her uncle's boat, her second sister's foreign debt. Recalling Xie Yizhen's proud expression over the years, Sun Bailu felt thousands of needles piercing her body at the same time. When your grandfather had an accident, I took the initiative to go find Dr. Liang, but I was running on the road and thought of your face, which annoyed me. The more I thought about it, the more I became unwilling, so I deliberately wasted time on the road. When Dr. Liang arrived at your house, your old and immortal grandfather's body was completely cold. And your uncle's ship, you wouldn't have thought that the cable tied to the pier was destroyed by me and Qin Jianhong together. That ship sank so well. Your uncle committed suicide not long ago. All the words Xie Yizhen said penetrated into Sun Bailu's mind, and Sun Bailu held her face and burst into tears. 5 hours later, the sky turned dark and the city was filled with bright lights. Sun Bailu held a note and found his former inmate Lin Qiumei, who had been released early from prison. Lin Qiumei led her to meet an older sister working in the Environmental Sanitation Management Department, who agreed that Sun Bailu could start work tomorrow. Sun Bailu was homeless and temporarily lived in Lin Qiumei's house, which was very narrow. Lin Qiumei made a blanket on the ground beside the bed to let Sun Bailu sleep. 3 months later, Sun Bailu bought a rundown second-hand wooling with her salary for only 4,000 yuan. She called Xie Yizhen again, crying over the phone and pleading with her for help. On the scorching afternoon of June, Sun Bailu sat on a second-hand wooling and watched without blinking as Xie Yizhen proudly appeared in the old city area carrying a big brand bag. Sun Bai appeared expressionless, stepped on the accelerator, and collided with Xie Yizhen. The old and dilapidated second-hand wooling was not powerful enough to knock people away, and Sun Bailu ran back and forth in Xie Yizhen's screams until Xie Yizhen could no longer make a sound. 2 days later, Sun Bailu returned to her hometown, located in Jianghai village, the southeast of Ancheng. She smoked coldly, took a last glance at the clear sea and sky, and then jumped down. Request ticket. Dear children, please give me the ticket. Shake bell, swinging arms, reciting words, jumping God, burning high incense, swinging rune mantra, inviting Supreme Master, Supreme Heavenly Lord, dancing long sword, spitting fire, inviting Guanyin Bodhisattva, Amitabha Buddha, opening the wooden fish app to knock on wooden fish, merit plus 10086, inviting Emperor, Amen, cross, singing praise song, high tone cannot go up, breaking sound, seeking votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Today is the day when Big Sister gets married. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 2. Today is the day when Big Sister gets married. The crackling sound of firecrackers was deafening, and in the midst of this deafening chaos, the super-penetrating power of the Swana sound was blowing a festive song. Sun Bailu frowned lightly and slowly opened her eyes. There was a tingling sensation in her wrists and ankles, and she moved twice with a thick hemp rope tied to it. Suddenly, Sun Bailu became foolish and stared blankly at the walls on all sides. A sense of familiarity surged in an instant, and Sun Bailu's eyes widened in surprise. Isn't this her firewood shed? She had many homes later on, but this was her first home. The pile of firewood behind her was all picked up by her and her second sister Sun Bailey from the beach, chopped and neatly arranged one by one. There are 2 windows in the firewood room, and in front of them hangs curtains made up of discarded old clothes. Sun Bailu's gaze finally fell on the right front corner. In the corner, leaning against a broom and a dustpan, the broom broke in 2. Sun Bailu's memory suddenly became clear. Today is the day when the eldest sister Sun Bai Yen got married. Their stepmother, Li Chuanju, forced Sun Bai Yen to marry Lin Inguang from the next village. Before that, none of their Sun family sisters had seen Lin Inguang. Big sister doesn't want to get married. She's pulling at the front and pushing at the back. A large group of people seem like kidnappers, trying to get Big sister into the car. Sun Bailu rushed out to stop her, but in the chaos, she was twisted and pulled at her hair. She quickly bit a few people, and then she was locked up in this firewood room. That broom was broken by her older brother Sun Chenghua when he hit her. The memory became vivid, and the area on the back where the broom had hit seemed to suddenly ache. Sun Bailu struggled to move her wrists and ankles, but the rope was tied too tightly. As time passed, the sound of firecrackers outside gradually quieted down, and the sound of gongs and drums was fading away. There was a creaking sound of unlocking outside the firewood room, and the door was pushed open. Sun Bailey quickly walked in and said, "Little sister." Untie the ropes on Sun Bailu's wrists and ankles, and Sun Bailey takes out a flat circular ointment box. Seeing that Sun Bailu has no reaction, Sun Bailey looks into Sun Bailu's eyes and says, "Little sister." But she saw her beautiful red eyes, looking at herself with tears in her eyes, her lips trembling violently. Sun Bailey's eyes also turned red, and she raised her hand to wipe away Sun Bailu's tears. "It's nothing. Kwoto Township is also nearby, let's take a car to see Big Sister in the future." Sun Bailu suddenly threw herself into her arms and burst into tears, her voice sorrowful. Sun Bailey thought she was crying because her elder sister got married, so she patted her shoulder and kept comforting her. Fortunately, Sun Bailu didn't cry for long. She quickly got up and raised her hand to wipe away her tears. She told herself from the bottom of her heart, she needs to remain calm, she needs to remain calm. After thinking for a moment, Sun Bailu quickly had an idea. She looked at her second sister and said, "Big sister didn't get married well. That Lin Inguang is a beast. I'm going out for a trip. When it's night, remember to put something under my blanket and pretend I'm already asleep. If they don't ask, you don't have to say anything. If they ask, you say I'm sad and sick, and ask them not to bother me." Sun Bailey panicked and said, "Where are you going? The boss has always been a bad guy. He hit you so hard, but let's not worry about him for now. You can't wander around at your age, there are human traffickers everywhere outside." Sun Bailu smiled and said, "Don't worry, second sister. I'm not running away from home. I'll definitely come back before I leave soon." As she spoke, she got up and ran outside. After a few steps, she came back and took the small ointment box from Sun Bailey's hand. "Remember, give me cover." Although there were still traces of crying on her face and her cheeks were red, Sun Bailu's smile was bright and generous, without any sadness from earlier, making it hard for her to touch. After realizing it, Sun Bailey quickly chased out and said, "Little sister. Upon coming out, Sun Bailu hurriedly avoided the water well and went to the back of the old house. The ancestors of the Sun family were wealthy fishermen in Jianghai village, and their houses occupied a large area, consisting of 3 small stone courtyards. One of the small courtyards also has an old gun tower, which is said to have existed during the Ming dynasty and was specifically designed to fight against pirates. Sun Bailu was digging in the corner under the turret, digging out a tin box. Sun Bailey hurried over and saw her open the tin box, which was filled with coins and several large banknotes. Sun Bailu quickly grabbed a few and stuffed them into her pocket, covered the tin box, and buried it in the soil. "Little sister," Sun Bailey said in fear, "where the hell are you going?" Sun Bailu patted off the dirt in her hand and said, "Don't worry, second sister. I'll explain that I'll be back tomorrow morning if I come back early. Didn't I need you to cover up for me? Don't ask too much about the rest, there's no time." How could Sun Bailey not worry? She hurriedly followed Sun Bailu and went to the courtyard again. At this moment, the central courtyard was filled with women who came to help with the kitchen, holding large pots one after another, hot and steaming, cooking with smoke rising from the air. Seeing them coming over, several women started teasing Sun Bailu about biting people. Sun Bailu pulled her face and ignored them, walking straight towards the kitchen, pretending to be very hungry, and directly grabbed the leftovers from last night. "The hot dishes outside are for guests to eat, while the leftovers here are for our own people to eat." The woman in the kitchen made a tisk-tisk sound, asking her to eat slowly and not reincarnate like a starving ghost. Sun Bailey followed behind and hurriedly said, "Little sister." Taking advantage of the moment when the women were all drawn away, Sun Bailu quickly grabbed the sharp knife that had long been on target, including the scabbard, and put it into her arms. The women didn't notice this scene, but Sun Bailey saw it clearly and her eyes widened in fear. The next second, Sun Bailu put down the vegetable plate in her hand, turned around, and left cleanly. Sun Bailey still couldn't let go and kept following, but her skills were not as good as Sun Bailu's. Sun Bailu returned to the old turret and climbed over the wall all at once. Before leaving, she left a sentence saying that she would definitely come back before tomorrow morning. Sun Bailey wanted to call her, but dared not shout too loudly. She anxiously stomped her feet in place and went back to the courtyard to help. "Pinch and meow, just give a recommendation ticket. Hurry up and smash me with your ticket. Tot. The new book period is really needed. I don't like meow 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 meow, I can still meow meow." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Xie Yizhen, aren't you feeling guilty when you see me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Xie Yizhen, aren't you feeling guilty when you see me? The Sun family has a total of 4 daughters and 1 son. Sister Sun Baiyan married a man named Lin Nguang today. In Sun Bailu's eyes, he is a complete beast, and there is also a beast mother. After Sun Baiyan married, she was beaten back at least 10 times by her wicked mother. In law with a stick, and once she refused to go back even after death. She was packed in a big burlap bag and dragged back like an animal. In her past life, Sun Baiyan drank pesticides twice. The first time she was saved, the second time she was completely gone. She died at the age of 30, leaving behind a son and daughter. Today, September 5, 1985, Sunday Bailu returned to her 15-year-old year, and her older sister Sun Baiyan was 23 years old. Sun Bailu wanted to use her methods to save her older sister. In 1985, Huanhai Township was still a township, and it was not until 1996 that Jiangling City approved the Rural Grassroots Administrative Divisions and became Huanhai Town. At this time, the roads in the village have not yet started to be repaired, and there are only 3 shuttle buses per day. The buses will stop in front of the vacant land of Tianho Temple, and there is still about an hour left until the last bus. However, because the bus drivers here do not follow the rules and are not punctual, often arriving late and leaving early, Sun Bailu is very anxious. She is afraid that the driver will leave early, so she runs with great strides and speeds up to get there. Suddenly, someone on the road called her, Lulu. The familiar voice made Sun Bailu feel as if she had been struck by lightning and stiff in place. Xie Yizhen ran over and said, Lulu. It's really you. Why are you here? I heard you were pulled by many people and even beaten by your brother. As Sun Bailu ran wildly, she gasped heavily for breath, and Xie Yizhen's voice made her blood boil fiercely inside her body. Her hands clenched tightly into fists, and she had to exert all her strength to restrain herself from swinging towards her face. When your grandfather had an accident, I took the initiative to go find Dr. Liang, but I was running on the road and thought of your face, which annoyed me. The more I thought about it, the more I became unwilling, so I deliberately procrastinated on the road. When Dr. Liang arrived at your house, your old and immortal grandfather's body was completely cold. The body has cooled through. It's so cold. The voice of Xie Yizhen, who is in her 60s and born in 2030, hummed in Sun Bailu's ears. In 1985, Sun Bailu was 15 years old, and her grandfather Sun Minshan passed away at the age of 14, which was last year. It was precisely because her beloved grandfather passed away that Li Chuanju dared to go crazy and sold her elder sister the following year. That is to say, Xie Yizhen has already owed her life at this time, her grandfather's life. Xie Yizhen looked at Sun Bailu and curiously said, Lulu. What's wrong with you? Where are you going in such a hurry? Sun Bailu slowly turned her head, her clear big eyes bright and sharp, and looked straight at Xie Yizhen. She is the same age as Xie Yizhen, who is 1 month younger than her. Xie Yizhen, who is still 15 years old now, still has a youthful and childish expression on her face. Unlike her previous life's arrogance, her eyes and eyebrows are now filled with timidity, weakness, and gentleness. Sun Bailu's gaze frightened Xie Yizhen, as if 2 knives were coming towards her. Xie Yizhen's heart pounded with fear and she said, Lulu. Sun Bailu said coldly, Xie Yizhen, don't you feel guilty when you see me? How could Xie Yizhen not feel guilty? She nervously said, Lulu, what are you talking about? You have a clear idea what I said, don't follow me, otherwise I will be impolite. After speaking, Sun Bailu turned around and left. Lulu. Xie Yizhen called her in place as she watched Sun Bailu leave quickly. The drums in Xie Yizhen's heart became louder and louder. She didn't know what Sun Bailu was referring to because she always apologized to her. The recent sorry incident was when she took the initiative to help Sun Bailu buy books before going to the market a few days ago, and overcharged her by 27%. Is this the case? Xie Yizhen has no bottom in her heart. Sun Bailu hurriedly ran to the Tianhe temple, feeling increasingly angry as she thought about it. She still carried a sharp knife in her arms, which was used by her family to bleed pigs before. She really wants to wipe Xie Yizhen's neck and bleed her. Suddenly, the car horn sounded ahead, and Sun Bailu was surprised. Is it about to depart now? She quickened her pace and ran like she was risking her life. The sound of the car horn goes from far to near. When turning, the driver didn't expect someone to run so fast and brake urgently. The tires made a very piercing sound on the old bluestone road. The driver and the people in the car collided forward due to inertia, and the driver's head almost hit the windshield. Sun Bailu also stopped too quickly, and her first reaction was to pull her body back, resulting in her buttocks falling to the ground. She looked at the car in front of her in shock, not a minibus, but an old-fashioned BJ Jeep. The driver poked his head out of the car window and said, "Damn it. Are you deaf? Can't you hear the horn?" Sun Bailu quickly got up and approached with a pale and beautiful face, sincerely saying, I'm sorry. What I heard, I'm sorry. It's just that the honking of the minibus and the honking of this old-fashioned Jeep are too old for her to distinguish. The car door in the back seat opened at this moment, and Sun Bailu saw a tall and handsome young man with fair skin emerge from the car. His overly handsome appearance was as cold as snow and as cold as the moon, like a flash of light that would draw anyone's attention at first glance. The young man lowered his head and looked at Sun Bailu, his eyes touching each other. He curved his lips and smiled, his deep black eyes showing a hint of self-blame. "Hello, have you been injured?" Starting method. Tickets come from all directions. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Her hometown, she returns. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Her hometown, she returns. The young man's smile was gentle and distant, very clean, like a clear stream rushing down the mountain in spring. He was wearing a white shirt, with a slightly immature voice and face, but his leg-length ratio was already like that of an adult. His head was at least 1.76 meters long. Sun Bailu has seen many male celebrities on TV, and this young man has a face that is not inferior to theirs. However, in her impression, neither Jianghai village nor the entire Huanhai township have seen this face. The tourism economy in Huanhai township has not yet developed, and it is impossible for tourists to be there. Hey, mind him, maybe he's here to visit relatives. Sun Bailu only wandered for a few seconds before coming back to her senses and saying, "I'm not injured. I'm sorry, I have something else to do. If it's fate, I'll compensate you again. Sorry for now." After speaking, Sun Bailu hurriedly ran with a limp, without looking back. She did indeed fall heavily, not only causing pain in her buttocks, but also causing her to frown in pain where her back and arms were hit. The boy watched her stumble away, pondering the words in her words, and smiled lightly. Fate. This non-colloquial statement is indeed strange in the current context of the event. The driver also got off the car and walked over, saying, "Sir, did you fall just now?" The boy looked at him and said, "I'm fine, and you?" "I almost had something to do," the driver muttered as he looked in the direction Sun Bailu was running away. "This little girl is very good looking, but she is very clumsy. A country bumpkin is a country bumpkin." The young man smiled and went back to the car, saying, "Let's go." A few minutes later, Sun Bailu, who had used all her strength to sprint, finally arrived at the Tianho temple. Before getting on the bus, she hid her 2 fried dough twists braids in a nearby corner and quickly put them down. She coiled them on her head and made a Taoist nun's head. Then, she dug up a lot of mud from the grass on the side and slapped it on her face, dirtying it. She then worked hard and poked her finger into her right eye. A large amount of tears flowed from one eye, and the area around her eye socket instantly turned red. She had to squint her eyes, and the other eye also half squinted. In this way, it can perfectly conceal her highly discerning eyes. The last bus had very few passengers and was empty inside. Sun Bailu limped onto the bus and lowered her head to choose the position in the last row. The driver of the minibus did not disappoint her and left before the departure time. She can confirm the time because there is a super invincible loudspeaker in the village that always reports the time on time. And now, the 5 o'clock chime has not been heard yet, and the car has already driven 1 kilometer. The last row was very bumpy. Sun Bailu opened the car window and a salty sea breeze blew in. She rubbed her wrist, which was hurt by the rope, and gazed at the sparkling waves on the sea level from afar. The setting sun tilts westward, the setting sun melts gold, and the communication line between the sky and the sea is vast and boundless. Flying birds sweep past the fishing boat returning late, and the big horn in the village finally rings. Dingling bell, dingling bell. Now, on September 5, 1985, at exactly 17:00, Thursday. Dingling bell, looking and listening, Sun Bailu's left eye socket also turned red. This is her beloved hometown that she has loved for a lifetime, the seaside fishing village that she has been longing for, and the homeland that she misses every moment in the loneliness of her later life. She's back, she's home. Anqing is famous for its hilly and mountainous landscape, with 8 mountains, 1 water, and 1 field. In 1985, the caves in each hill had not yet been opened up, making transportation very inconvenient. From Huanhai Township to Quoto Township, in my past life, driving only took 20 minutes. Now, there are two reasons why the road is not working and the car is not working. It's bumpy and bumpy, driving for a full hour. However, for Sun Bailu, since she has already boarded the car, there is no need to worry. She is even afraid that the darkness may not be fast enough. In the 1980s, there was a saying that before getting off at the station, one could call and stop at any time. Sun Bailu, relying on her memory, deliberately chose a deserted area to get off. As soon as she got off, she went to find a remote corner and hid it inside. The sky in September was relatively dark, and Sun Bailu fed mosquitoes for a long time. It wasn't until it was almost dark that she came out and walked towards Lin Yinguang's house. My elder sister has been beaten in her past life, and several times she was beaten so much that she couldn't get out of bed. People from the Lin family would call and ask my mother's family to come and take care of her. Sun Bailu has come to take care of her 3 times, so she knows exactly where the Lin family is and how the Lin family's terrain is. Lin Yinguang's father died very early, and there was an old mother in the family who was very fierce, named Wang Ruyu. Lin Yinguang has his own younger brother and sister, who are paralyzed. Later, he bought a daughter-in-law from an unknown source and gave birth to 4 daughters and a son. Lin Yinguang's younger sister, Lin Jinyi, inherited her mother's ferocity and was also very bad to Sun Baiyan. Later, Lin Jinyi married a wealthy local man in Quoto Township. Due to her bad temper, she started fighting every now and then, and the couple even drove and bumped into each other on the street. But that's all for now. Now, the Lin family is still an old house, surrounded by a small courtyard. At this time, gongs and drums are played, red decorations are hung, and neighbors come and go to congratulate each other, making it extremely lively. Sun Bailu headed straight to the restroom in the back of the Lin family's house. The first thing she did inside was cut off the light bulb pull rope of the restroom. Then, she quietly squatted in the long grass behind the tree near the toilet, motionless, and continued to feed mosquitoes. =V=. You quickly recommend ticket ducks to me. My head is itching and I feel like my love brain is about to grow. Whoever recommends ticket ducks to me will fall in love with someone, everyone. I don't want to vote anymore. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Stabbed him in the waist with a knife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Stabbed him in the waist with a knife. Eating banquets in rural areas emphasizes a festive atmosphere. The Lin family has many relatives and friends, and a full 20 tables were set up for the banquet. The upper and lower floors of several large houses are full, and there are also several tables in the yard. Many people go to the restroom. Sun Bailu silently lurked in the dark night, her bright black eyes fixed on the people who came to use the restroom one by one. Finally, an hour later, she saw Lin Yinguang. There are very few overweight people these days, but Lin Yinguang is quite chubby. Wang Ruyu loves this eldest son very much and everything comes first because Lin Yinguang likes to eat meat. Wang Ruyu wakes up at 4 a.m. every day and takes a car to the pig slaughterhouse in Ningxiang to buy freshly slaughtered meat, which is cheap and fresh. As long as it's what Lin Yinguang wants, Wang Ruyu will satisfy him if she sells herself. Today as the groom, Lin Yinguang was overjoyed. The distant lights shone on his oily face. He greeted people as he walked around to the backyard, and opened the wooden door of the thatched cottage to enter. Feeling around the wall, Lin Yinguang couldn't touch the line. Who's so damn powerful? How can others use the broken thread? Lin Yinguang scolded and untied his belt. He drank too much alcohol, which made him feel uncomfortable as he urinated and hiccuped while drinking. Suddenly, there was a sound of the wooden door being pulled open from behind. Lin Yinguang was startled and about to turn around to curse whether he was deaf or not. Suddenly, a sudden chill hit his waist, and before he could turn his head back, the toilet door slammed shut. The speed is very fast, and the lifting force is also strong. It's more like falling than closing. Lin Nguyen's mind was still blank, and there was already a sharp pain coming from his waist. He reached out to wipe it off, and a large amount of blood rushed out from the wound. Lin Nguyen was so scared that he quickly covered his stomach, didn't even pay attention to the zipper in his pants, and ran out of the wooden door, saying, "Murder! Murder! Help!" During the banquet, there was an instant of panic and chaos. Sun Bailu ran very fast, like a sprint, into the dark field and left the Lin family. The chaotic cries behind her grew further and further away, until the surroundings became boundless darkness and no longer a single light could be seen. She slowly stopped and rested her hands on her thighs, panting heavily. She has never used such a fast speed in her previous or present life. Open the door, bayonet, close the door, run. In just 3 seconds, she finished in one go. Sun Bailu raised her hand and panted as she looked at the bloody knife under the moonlight. If possible, she actually wants to kill Lin Nguyen with one blow. In their past lives, she and her second sister Sun Bailey drove to the Lin family, and the eldest sister's body lay in the yard. She shook her hands and lifted the white cloth. The elder sister's face had already covered with corpses, her eyes half closed, and her gaze dim and lifeless. Looking at such a big sister, Sun Bailu wanted to kill Lin Nguyen and cut him to pieces. But not yet. Sun Bailu put away her sharp knife and stood up straight. The wind blowing in the fields raised her messy hair on the forehead. If we kill Lin Nguyen now, there will be a lot of trouble. Murders and injuries are two different types of cases. However, with this knife, she was certain that she had accurately stabbed into Lin Nguyen's waist, which was enough for him to eat a pot. Walking home, Sun Bailu did not take the daytime road, but took a shortcut up the mountain, which can be described as crossing mountains and rivers. After walking for several hours, she was the first to see the sea in her hometown. With a wave of her hand, she threw the knife out of her hand. The waves in the darkness beat against the rocks one by one, and the sea breeze howled, blowing in my ears. It was noisy and wild, intending to lift everything up and overturn the world. Sun Bailu took a deep look at the sea, withdrew her gaze, and turned back to go home. Kind-hearted person, could you give me some recommended tickets? Tick to tea, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Getting married on the first night is not a good thing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Getting married on the first night is not a good thing. Dawn reveals white, and the sky brightens from the east. It spreads out towards the west in the dim light, with beautiful clouds and rosy clouds, illuminating half of the sky. In the early morning birdsong, Wang Ruyu was helped back home by 2 women from the same village. The courtyard was in a mess of cups and plates, and the kitchen helpers had just started tidying up. When they returned, the women gathered around. One woman moved out a long bench to let Wang Ruyu rest, while others quickly asked Lin Nguyen what was going on. Wang Ruyu waved her hand, her head tilted, and she looked speechless and dejected. 2 women who came back with Wang Ruyu helped to answer. One said that Lin Nguyen had undergone surgery and was seriously injured, so he had to stay in the hospital for several days. Another person said that when he comes back, he will tidy up some pots and pans. Wang Ruyu needs to accompany him, and now Lin Jinyi is guarding over there. A kitchen assistant woman who had been busy in the courtyard all night sighed, a good wedding has turned out like this. The police are still investigating behind the toilet and haven't found anything. Another kitchen assistant said, fortunately, we have an extra wife at home now. You and Denise are going to the hospital to accompany us. This new wife happens to be able to cook for your family in Engwo at home. Yeah, it depends on whether she can do it or not. Alas, you said this was so unlucky. It was supposed to be a good day, but the favor was given by someone. That's right, after being hospitalized, my vitality has been damaged again, it will take me a long time to recover. Wang Ruyu sat on the bench, listening to them say one word at a time. Suddenly, someone mentioned Ba Zi. Wang Ruyu's eyes trembled as she thought of the words of the blind man who calculated Ba Zi. Marriage is such a big deal, Wang Ruyu must have used the 8 characters of Lin Yinguang and Sun Baiyan to calculate. The blind man said that this pair of men and women have a perfect combination of 8 characters, a divine gift, and there is nothing more suitable for the man than this woman. But besides matching the man, this woman also has some shortcomings in her Ba Zi. If she doesn't add water and wood, it will be a bit unlucky. Bad luck. These 2 characters were not taken seriously by Wang Ruyu at that time. The 8 characters match so well, what else are they? If there is a shortage of water and wood, then add water and wood. But now, something really happened. Wang Ruyu's anger rose from her heart and suddenly stood up, it must be this mischievous short-lived ghost. She immediately walked briskly towards Lin Yinguang's new house. A few kitchen women were taken aback and quickly followed suit. The door downstairs of Lin Yinguang's new house is open, and there are 2 windows in the front and back of the house, with scattered lighting. Last night, 3 tables were set up here, but I haven't had time to tidy them up yet. I brewed the taste of the food all night, which smells uncomfortable. Wang Ruyu quickly walked upstairs and said, Sun Baiyan. Sun Baiyan. Sun Baiyan woke up from the bed with a start. Before her eyes could open, her hair was suddenly grabbed by someone, and she was immediately dragged off the bed. Sun Baiyan's hands were still tied, and she screamed as she lifted them to block her. Wang Ruyu grabbed her hair with her hands and kicked her head with her feet. If it weren't for the women who followed her pulling her back hard, her few kicks would have kicked Sun Baiyan's face directly. Wang Ruyu pointed at Sun Baiyan and roared with a fierce expression, "You scoundrel, it's not good to get married the first night. Your husband is currently in the hospital, and you're still sleeping. Why don't you sleep to death?" Sun Baiyan was grabbed by someone before she woke up, her head momentarily confused, and she trembled all over while holding her head. The more Wang Ruyu thought about it, the more angry she became. She approached and hit her again, "Don't sleep. Get up now, go downstairs and pack up." She was so angry that her strength increased. The women next to her looked at her, but not many people really used their strength to pull her, so there was no need to argue with Wang Ruyu over this matter. Just then, a sharp woman's voice suddenly sounded, "What is this doing?" The women turned around and saw Li Chuanju, the stepmother of Sun Baiyan. The 2 girls from the Sun family also followed and stood behind Li Chuanju. The women's gaze fell on Sun Bailu. The girls of the Sun family are all very agile, especially the youngest Sun Bailu. The women couldn't help but take a few more glances at her, with slender eyebrows, bright eyes, upturned nose and cherry lips. Especially these eyes, watery and clear, were black. The women secretly thought they were truly beautiful. As soon as they saw Sun Baiyan on the ground, Sun Bailu and Sun Bailey were surprised and quickly ran over to help her, saying, "Big sister." Wang Ruyu extended her finger and said, "Don't touch her. You're not allowed to touch her." Sun Baiyan was beaten until her hair was disheveled. The thick hemp rope twisted her wrists red and her skin was worn. When she saw her sisters, she began to sob, shrink in their arms and tremble, and tears kept falling down. Sun Bailu's eyes were red with anger from her elder sister's appearance, and the thought of her past life made her even more furious. Wang Ruyu. Sun Bailu looked up and glared at her, "Our Sun family members are still alive. Did you beat people like that?" This spirited drinking made all the women look at her again. "Thank you, my dear friends, for your recommended tickets. I have already thanked you, just give it to me. Please. QAQ. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. You raise us old girls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. You raise us old girls. Sun Bailu is the youngest of the sisters in the Sun family. She is the most beautiful and good-looking. Her eyes are big, bright and full of spirit. She is only 15 years old now, but her height is almost catching up with her second sister. Her limbs are slender, her neck is beautiful, her back is straight and thin, and her demeanor is not good. Now that she is so angry, her aura is fully open, like an adult, completely unlike a little girl. Wang Ruyu looked at her with anger in her heart, feeling quite pale on her face. She immediately became even angrier and reached out to forcefully grab Sun Baiyan. Come over here. Sun Bailu hugged her elder sister tightly and looked at Li Chuanju. She had originally planned to shout at her but ignored her, afraid of making Li Chuanju unhappy. She changed her voice and shouted, "Look at this person." Li Chuanju was taken aback for a moment, then regained her senses and quickly went forward to catch Wang Ruyu. "What's up? You dare to fight in front of us? I really think our Sun family is empty." Lin and Guang had an accident, and someone ran to the phone booth last night to call the Jianghai Village Brigade. The deputy director of the village, Tan Shai, was on duty and ran to the Sun family overnight to talk about this matter. This morning, before dawn, Sun Bailu took Sun Bailey to find Li Chuanju. The two sisters said they were worried and wanted Li Chuanju to go to Quoto Township together. Li Chuanju, who came to open the door, got up in a fit of anger and reached out to twist Sun Bailu. Sun Bailu avoided and looked at Sun Daqian, who had been woken up in the room, saying, "Dad, the Lin family has had such a big incident. We both need to go and take a look, both emotionally and logically. We can't help but do this favor." Moreover, Sun Bailu turned her head to look at Li Chuanju. "I and my second and third sisters will still have to get married in the future. The eldest sister encountered such a thing on her first night of marriage. If someone with a heart is talking nonsense about our Sun family girl as a broom star and spreading rumors, who will marry us in the future? Where will you go to earn money? How many old girls will you support us?" Li Chuanju frowned at what she said. Sun Bailu continued to say to her, "Now it's only you who can speak loudly. If you don't take me and my second sister, just the two of us, do you think it's decent? When others talk about this in the future, they will definitely scold you first and then scold us. Anyway, the backbone of our Sun family is waiting to be poked. If you take us now, your face will still shine. In the future, others will surely praise you as a good stepmother, and you can even go and take the lead for your married daughter." After speaking, Sun Bailu's gaze turned back to Sun Daqian. Her biggest characteristic as a father is his love for face. If the daughters of the Sun family are criticized, he, as a father, will be the most shameful. Sure enough, Sun Daqian didn't disappoint her and said, "It makes sense. Little girl is right, Chuanju, hurry up, change your clothes and take them." Li Chuanju longed for these girls to get married soon. After hearing Sun Bailu's words, Li Chuanju was really afraid of getting married and immediately went to wash and change clothes. The early bus departs at 7:30. Although the driver will leave 10 or 20 minutes early, Sun Bailu can't wait for a moment. She leads Li Chuanju and Sun Bailey to the front of the vegetable market to wait for the small trucks that come to deliver meat and fresh vegetables to unload and return. She gives a few coins and rubs along the way. After coming over, Sun Bailu had to pretend not to know the way and follow Li Chuanju around to inquire. Finally, she found out about the Lin family. As soon as she entered the yard, she did hear Wang Ruyu's curse. Now, Sun Bailu and Sun Bailey are holding Sun Baiyan, with Li Chuanju blocking in front of them. With one hand inserted into their waist, they point at Wang Ruyu and ask her to speak clearly. "Why is the daughter of our Sun family who went out like a broom star? It wasn't you who came to our house with the Bazi sign and insisted that Bai Yan marry us over. You went to the temple to calculate your fate yourself, and went to the blind man to see the Bazi sign. Alright, your son caused trouble outside and caused a lot of trouble. He almost died from being stabbed, blamed on us. Ha! Is that reasonable? Our Sun family is so bullied, isn't it? Wang Ruyu was furious and said, Li Chuanju, whose son is causing trouble outside. We are so kind and obedient. Just your granddaughter, the Sun family, will be unlucky on the first day of marriage. I think your family is unlucky. As soon as I came in this morning, I felt a gust of wind. Oh, it's really scary. You go down and ask the police if you have found the culprit. If you say it's not your son who caused trouble, then why are so many people going to pee and your son got stabbed? Oh, maybe it's not a person who stabbed your son. I have goosebumps. Li Chuanju shook her arm. It's really insulting, but I'm afraid of scolding myself. The women next to them also shouted, don't talk nonsense. They just got married and didn't want to talk about these things. You. Wang Ruyu didn't hesitate to attack Li Chuanju. I'm afraid of you. Li Chuanju fought back. The two of them huddled together, and the women next to them quickly gathered and said, don't fight, don't fight. They are all in-laws' mothers, don't touch them to hurt harmony. Dear mother, what kind of gods are all casting recommendation votes for me, duck, end of this chapter. Chapter 8. Dare you strike my niece? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Dare you strike my niece? Just as there was a heated argument upstairs, a new commotion suddenly came from downstairs. Upon hearing the man's loud shouting, Sun Bailu immediately raised her ears high and held her breath. This voice made her feel extremely familiar, but through such a huge space and time, she couldn't recall who it was, only feeling a very, very familiar title stuck in her throat. Until a kitchen assistant woman hurriedly ran up and said, Guang, his mother. The uncle of the Sun family is here. The words, uncle, made Sun Bailu's eyes suddenly bright and full of surprise. Uncle. Yes. It's uncle. Sun Bailu's uncle's name is Xie Yizhen, and like Sun Bailu's grandfather Sun Minshan, he was the first fishing boat leader in Jianghai village. However, at that time, his uncle was only 19 years old. A person who owned their first boat at the age of 19 is not only legendary in Jianghai village, but also in the entire Huanhai township or Jiangling city. And my uncle's ship is very good, with a tonnage and volume. Even in my uncle's 19-year-old era, the cost of shipbuilding started at 10,000 yuan. Not to mention hiring manpower, in addition to physically demanding crew members, at least one technician is required to accompany the ship. However, my uncle himself came from a background in machine tools, which saved him a lot of money. Thinking of her uncle, a sharp pain surged in Sun Bailu's heart. In her past life, she never got married, but had two boyfriends. Her second boyfriend, Xie Yizhen, initiated a project under the guise of investing in container ships and defrauded more than half of the residents of Huanhai Township of their savings. At that time, it was guaranteed by her uncle. Because Xie Yizhen is her boyfriend, and her uncle Xie Yizhen is the person who loves her the most in the world after her mother and grandfather passed away one after another. Xie Yizhen approached his uncle based on the relationship he had with her, and every day he coaxed his uncle to find the north and south. Finally, irreversible consequences were caused. When these things happened, Sun Bailu knew nothing. At first, she vaguely felt that Xie Yizhen was manipulating something, but every time she asked, Xie Yizhen said it was a man's business and women should not interfere. In the eyes of Sun Bailu at that time, she didn't think anything big would happen to Xie Yizhen until he ran away. This stirring pot hit Sun Bailu with a bang, leaving her feeling confused for the past 6 months. Later, she put in a lot of effort to figure out Xie Yizhen's scam and why the people in the village who were deceived could keep their mouths shut and not reveal a word to the outside world. Because Xie Yizhen took a large number of non-existent newspapers and credit documents, claiming that the investment in this container ship is a matter on the U.S. side, the country does not allow it, but it will be released in a few years because he has internal documents. He also said that once it is opened up, the people who have invested in the entire Huanhai township will be the first batch of beneficiaries of dividends. When the money rolls in, wealth generates wealth, and the entire village can develop. But before truly opening up, we cannot discuss with others or promote it to the outside world, otherwise we will have to kill our heads. In this way, he gradually deceived and threatened the villagers, obtained a large amount of investment from them, and then ran away with this huge sum of money, never appearing again. And my uncle, because he made a guarantee, had to go bankrupt to compensate, and my Aunt Guasuping divorced him for this. Later on, what made my uncle even worse was that his beloved fishing boat sank. My uncle's last hope is all pinned on that ship. Without the ship, everything is gone. On the second day after the fishing boat sank, my uncle went missing. When someone discovered him again, it was his body, which had been rotten for half a month. On the hillside full of wild azaleas, my uncle chose to hang himself. Now Sun Bailu knows that the boat was also operated by Xie Yizhen. She personally said during the visit that Xie and Chen Jianhong had cut the fishing boat's cable. The surrounding voices pulled Sun Bailu back to reality, and when she looked up, Xia Jihong had already appeared with a shoulder pole. Sun Bailu regained her senses from her sadness when her uncle's majestic pole suddenly curved into a smile. If it were 5 years ago, my uncle was definitely holding an axe in his hand. In recent years, the environment has changed, and the new wind outside has gradually blown into their coastal fishing village. Holding an axe would result in being caught or even executed, so my uncle carried a pole. Uncle didn't come alone, he also followed the crew on his ship, each carrying a pole. The men who fish at sea will not come back for several months as soon as they go out to sea. They are very rough, with arms as big as bowls. Standing at this point, their momentum suddenly comes out. As soon as Xia Jihong appeared, she shouted loudly, "I knew it." He pointed at Sun Baiyan and shouted at Wang Ruyu, "What are you doing? What are you doing? I can't control their marriage, and I can't even control my niece being beaten. How dare you hit my niece? You're not killing me." Ah! His lung capacity was very terrifying, and this roar was full of vitality, quite loud. In order to match the momentum, he even raised his foot and kicked a stool away. The stool hit the corner of the wall and broke 2 of its 4 legs. Sun Bailey looked at Sun Bailu and asked with her eyes if she was shouting. Sun Bailu shook her head. In my impression, my uncle only cared about the incident where my elder sister was beaten by Lin in Guang once. After all, my uncle has been out to sea all year round, and when my elder sister first married into the Lin family, she was not beaten as badly. Perhaps there was, but the older sister didn't say it. She was afraid that her family would worry, so she ran back when she couldn't bear it anymore. No one is calling him uncle now. He spontaneously brought the crew on board and each person carried a pole. This is obviously what I heard, just like them, I arrived early in the morning. Sun Bailu suddenly had tears in her eyes, and her heart was filled with a handful of blood. Great, she saw her uncle again. She can finally make up for the regrets and guilt of her previous life. And the feeling of being cared for by family is really, really good. No matter how overbearing Wang Ruyu is, she would never dare to act recklessly in front of so many fierce and evil men. Under Xia Jihong's aura, Wang Ruyu's face turned pale, and she struggled to swallow her saliva. She hid behind the person, so frightened that she couldn't say a word. Xia Jihong asked other kitchen women to come down and talk to her own family without the need for outsiders to be present. Even the police who rushed to investigate the situation at the scene behind him had to rush. After tugging and tugging for a while, Xia Jihong exclaimed, "Oh my! What's wrong with me carrying the pole? If I really do something wrong, you can take it away from me on the spot later. This is not enough. You have achievements, achievements." Finally, he simply threw the pole out and said, "Is this enough?" Wang Ruyu trembled and felt that she should leave the pole and throw the person out. "It's really not possible, you can just throw her away. After all, the police finally went back, leaving only one standing outside the door. Xie Yizhen happily went to close the door and asked the one left not to eavesdrop. Taught as a destitute person, I dug out a paper ticket in my bag that I had never seen before. It took me a while to realize that it was, "Please give me a recommendation vote," end of this chapter. Chapter 9. You don't know what I'm feeling sad about. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. You don't know what I'm feeling sad about. As soon as the door closed, Xie Yizhen asked Sun Bailu and Sun Bailey to help Sun Baiyan back to bed. He walked over and asked Sun Baiyan how many times Wang Ruyu had hit her. Sun Baiyan dared not speak and sat by the bed crying with her head down. Xie Yizhen saw the rope on Sun Baiyan's wrist and suddenly became angry. "Wang Ruyu, what are you treating our daughter like? Where are you binding livestock?" Wang Ruyu finally found a point to talk to. She glanced at Li Chuanju and said in a soft, mosquito-like voice, "It was Li Chuanju who asked someone to tie it up, it's not my business." Li Chuanju had just had a fight with her, and her hair was torn apart. When she heard this, her voice was very loud. "Yeah, I'll let someone get on the sedan chair. The sedan chair has arrived, and you don't know how to untie it. If I had known you were a pig, why would I tie a white swallow? I'll tie you up. Then I'll drag and kill you directly at the pig farm." The police officer who stayed knocked on the door outside and said, Hey. Pay attention to your vocabulary." Li Chuanju didn't care and crossed her waist, shouting, "What kind of words should you pay attention to? When she hit us, Bai Yan, and me just now, why didn't you rush forward? I see this Wang Ruyu, she should have hit us, she deserves to die." All right, Xie Yizhen said. "Wang Ruyu, you beat up our daughter like this today. How can you explain it to us?" Explanation. Wang Ruyu's expression seemed to have heard some funny words. She glanced at Sun Baiyan and then looked back at Xie Yizhen, muttering softly, "What explanation do you want? She is the daughter-in-law I married openly, and now she belongs to the Lin family." Sun Bailu suddenly said, "Let's get divorced." The girl's voice was clear and pleasant, with a clean tone and a calm tone, but the three words that came out calmly seemed to have dropped a thunder in the room. Everyone was shocked and looked at her at once. Sun Bailu's eyebrows and eyes were distant and cold, with a hint of impatient disgust. "Divorce, let's take big sister back." Before Wang Ruyu could speak, Li Chuanju came over and cursed, "You child, what are you talking about? This marriage is about getting married as soon as you want, or getting divorced as soon as you want." Xie Yizhen also said, "Yes, Lulu, how can you say that? Don't say that. Not leaving." Wang Ruyu shouted, "What's leaving for? We spent so much money to get married, what's leaving for?" Li Chuanju quickly rushed out and said, "This is our adults' business. You go out. Big sister, stay, second brother, take your sister downstairs." Sun Bailu glanced at them and looked back at Sun Baiyan beside her. Her words just now clearly surprised Sun Baiyan as well. However, the older sister's gaze was too complicated, and even Sun Bailu, who had lived for decades, couldn't see through her gaze. It was like panic, confusion, and a sudden glimmer of light, but it still seemed to accept fate. Sun Bailu understood how unpleasant the word divorce sounds these days, not to mention that she got married on the first day and divorced the next day. If there is an official position in a government unit, it can be directly identified as a work-style issue with no future prospects. In the city, officials, and wealthy people, they all avoid the word divorce. For the small common people living in a closed fishing village in the southeast corner, as she said to Li Chuanju today, their spines will be pierced by someone. Li Chuanju urged, "What are you still waiting for? Second, why don't you take your sister downstairs?" Sun Bailey looked at Sun Bailu and said in a very low voice, "Little sister, let's go down. Uncle is here, it's okay." Sun Bailu felt sad in her heart. Will it be okay? I won't do it. Due to today's negotiation, no matter what explanation my uncle needs, he cannot escape the marriage of the imprisoned elder sister. Any bargaining within this framework is nothing more than the difference between being bullied a little bit and being bullied 100 points. However, she was still young at the time, and her words were not loud in front of these self-proclaimed adults. No, even if she is not a teenager, no matter how old she is, or even the most respected elderly person in the village now, no one will pay attention to her when she says, divorce, because no one can stop the giant wheel of the entire era. Sun Baiyan also reached out and gently pushed Sun Bailu, saying, little sister, you and Bai Li can go down. Big sister is fine, there's an uncle around. Sun Bailu lowered her gaze and said. Good. As she stood up, Sun Bailey took her hand and said, let's go, little sister. The women in the yard were very busy and engaged, whispering about things upstairs while busy, and talking about their uncle in a vicious manner. Seeing the sudden appearance of Sun Bailu and Sun Bailey inside the door, the women quickly shut their mouths. Sun Bailu let go of Sun Bailey, and she went over to bring a long bench and placed it under the eaves. She sat down against the outer wall and looked coldly at these women. Several women were uncomfortable under her gaze and couldn't help but quietly turn their heads to look at her. How could a young girl, who is clearly young and beautiful, with bright eyebrows and eyes, look like a wolf in her eyes? Sun Bailey also sat down and said, little sister, don't be angry. You have an uncle. That's the same sentence again, there's an uncle. Uncle Ku, he is just a small person. Sun Bailu shook her head and said, sister, you don't know what I'm feeling sad about. Sorry, big sister was beaten by someone. Sun Bailu still shook her head. That's not being beaten, that's being killed, being strangled by the times, chronic Ling Qi. A long time ago, there was a commotion coming down the stairs from upstairs. The first person to come out was Xie Yizhen. Seeing Sun Bailu and Sun Bailey sitting at the door, he came over and patted Sun Bailu's thin shoulder, saying, all right, Lulu, let's go. Sun Bailu asked, how did we talk about it? Xie Yizhen said, she compensated Big Swallow and promised us that she won't hit Big Swallow again. If she dares to take action again in the future, I will depose her 2 sons. Sun Bailu said, if we compensate a little, can we offset her beating my elder sister like this today? Sun Bailey spoke softly, little sister, don't say anything. Xie Yizhen frowned and spoke helplessly and indulgently, oh, Lulu, let's go. Uncle will go back and buy you something delicious. Sun Bailu also knows that saying anything else is useless. Not to mention that the police are here, even if they are not there, my uncle cannot really go up and slap Wang Ruyu a few times. After all, in the minds of all of them, the elder sister Sun Baiyan is already spilled water. In order to make the elder sister live well in the future, this face cannot be torn. Iron head, strong heart, bald pineapple riding solo, looking up at the air and shouting, the immortals quickly vote for recommendations. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Widowing is better than being beaten. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Widowing is better than being beaten. The crew members who came with Xie Yizhen were smoking outside the Lin family courtyard, and their cigarette butts were thrown all over the ground. Sun Bailu and Sun Bailey followed Xie Yizhen out and saw those cigarette butts. Sun Bailu's gaze froze slightly, and her expression became blurred. In the last 3 months of her previous life, she worked as a cleaner in Ansheng. And the cigarette butts on the street are her biggest daily troubles. Seeing Sun Bailu lose focus, Sun Bailey whispered, Lulu. Sun Bailu turned his head and said, Don't think about it. Sun Bailey looked at her sadly. It will get better. Sun Bailu smiled lightly and said, if you don't work hard, how can you get better? Effort. What kind of effort? Like third sister. She suddenly mentioned Sun Baiyun, which surprised Sun Bailey. Her gaze instinctively turned to Li Chuanjiu over there. Li Chuanjiu and Xie Yizhen didn't look at each other, and now they were walking far from each other. Although the distance is far, Sun Bailey is still afraid of being heard by her. "Little sister, shush," Sun Bailey quickly said. Sun Bailu calmly said, "The reason why Lin Yinguang and Wang Ruyu are so arrogant is because he has the confidence given to him by the whole society. He doesn't need to do anything and can get a lot of things. But for the older sister, if she wants freedom, she needs to put in hundreds, thousands of times more effort. I only now realize that the most sober person in our family is the third sister. Little sister. Sun Bailey was extremely anxious. Sun Bailu smiled and looked at Xie Yizhen, who was going ahead to pick up the pole. Xie Yizhen's pole was picked up by the crew and taken out, with everyone's poles leaning against a crooked-necked tree. "Uncle," Sun Bailu walked over, "how did you think of coming over?" "Ah." Xie Yizhen turned around, paused, and said, "Oh. Is this case a joke? It's been circulating all morning, and it's being talked about everywhere. I was planning to bring some people over to give Big Yanzi a strong voice. I wanted to scare the thief who used the black knife and show him that there's someone in Big Yanzi's family. If you mess with her husband, it's just to mess with her family. As a result, I'm doing the opposite. Wang Ruyu, she remembered it for me. If you dare to mess around again next time, I won't be polite." The last few words were deliberately spoken loudly by him, and all the busy women in the yard could hear them. Sun Bailu felt that the play in her uncle's words was completely reversed, and there was no flaw in what she said, it was completely correct. "Because she is the thief bone?" Sun Bailey asked, "Uncle, how did you get here?" "You rented a truck, it's such a short distance, you charged me 2 yuan. Thinking of the current prices, Sun Bailu couldn't help but say, "It's so expensive." "It's okay, it's a return trip. But there's no way here, we have to get out. The car is parked outside waiting for me, let's go, let's go. The road here is not easy to walk yet." The group walked along the village road towards the southeast, attracting the attention of countless passing villagers along the way. Many people recognize Xie Yizhen and greet her from afar. Xie Yizhen is enthusiastic and cheerful, and looks like an old acquaintance to everyone. There is no sea in Quoto Township, and fields are everywhere. The 4 fields are flourishing and lush, with lush vegetation. There are also streams passing by not far away, with clear waterways and a vibrant wild vitality, singing happily between heaven and earth. Sun Bailu calculated the year, and there are at least 5 years left for road construction here. She is really familiar with this area. After walking for about 15 minutes, I finally reached the side of the road. Xie Yizhen's car was not small, and with the addition of the 3 of them, it was more than enough. Li Chuanjiu was reluctant to take Xie Yizhen's car, but thought of having to pay for a ticket when she went back, so she decided to take it. It's not worth saving money. Xie Yizhen has always been a talkative person, and with the grandeur of today's trend, he is in a good mood. He always talks to Sun Bailu and Sun Bailey about everything he sees. Sun Bailu suddenly thought that if his uncle were not the captain, he would go to the big city to roll up his sleeves and start selling. In less than 10 years, he would definitely be able to take advantage of the trend of the times and become the leader of the sales industry. So, what Xue Weizhou was initially interested in was not her, but his uncle. There are only 2 roads in Huanhai Township. Xie Yizhen's home is located between Jianghai Village and Haiyang Village. Xie Yizhen prefers to take the road from Haiyang Village, which is closer. So the truck stopped near the Tianho Temple, and Sun Bailu and the others got off and left. As soon as she got off the car, Li Chuanjiu angrily said to Sun Bailu and Sun Bailey, "Hurry up. You've caused a lot of trouble and wasted most of the day." After speaking, she walked away without looking back. Sun Bailey said to Sun Bailu, "Little sister, let's go. Sun Bailu turned her head to look in the direction where Xie Yizhen and the crew had left. Because the road here is short, the truck has disappeared from view. At noon, the sky is blue and the sky is clear for thousands of miles. At the end of the road, except for a big bend, there is an endless sea. Sun Bailu's clear and bright eyes slightly narrowed, as if deeper than the sea. Since opening her eyes and returning to this world, she seems to have never stopped, and now she can finally catch her breath. However, she didn't know whether it was sadness or joy in her heart. Upon closer reflection, it should be more joy than sorrow. She stood here alive, although it was too late to save her grandfather, she could change the fate of her elder sister and uncle. And her own destiny. Little sister. Sun Bailey called her. Sun Bailu let out a long breath, with a bright smile on her face. She turned her head to look at Sun Bailey and said, "Second sister, let's go back." Sun Bailey suddenly grabbed her wrist and said, "Wait. What's wrong?" Sun Bailey hesitated for a moment and her expression became solemn. "Little sister. To be honest with second sister, are the things that happened to the Lin family related to you? Where did you go last night?" "Ah." Sun Bailu blinked, his eyes reflecting the sky, a clear and flawless scene. Sun Bailey hesitated and asked, "Is that right?" Puff. Sun Bailu chuckled lightly and her voice was as clear as a bell. "Second sister, what are you thinking? The police didn't even find out. So last night. I had something to attend to last night. You see, I've never been to the Lin family before. How could I possibly know where they are? It's better to go in the dark and ask someone for directions." Sun Bailey frowned lightly and said, "That's true." Sun Bailu took Sun Bailey's arm and said, "Besides, second sister, you don't want big sister to get married, do you? I think that murderer is quite good. He has a clear distinction between good and evil, and acts on behalf of the heavens. Sometimes, losing a spouse is better than getting beaten up. Besides, Lin Ingguang hasn't died yet, and his stabbing is still not accurate enough." "Shoo." Sun Bailey quickly said, "Pooh, pooh, pooh, what a widower, don't talk nonsense." Sun Bailu smiled and said, "All right, let's go." In the depths of her heart, Sun Bailu murmured softly, "Second sister, you may wish you could also lose your spouse in the future." Requesting recommended tickets. 1 meow meow, 2 woof meows, after 3 others hit you, I flashed over to take the punch. End of this chapter.